PhD in applied economics. He has a PhD in applied economics, and he's been a professor at the School of Business and Governance at the University of Cape Verde, and he serves as the president of the Association of Promotion of Financial Education, PROFIN, and Market Dynamics, Agriprice. He coordinates the master's course in leadership, public policy, and at UniCV, and is the director of the CING Center for Studies in Business and Governance. So Professor Baptista has several academic works published and scientific articles and books, and he is also an expert in subjects on the blue economy. So he will be giving us his perspective of the blue economy and from Cape Verde. And our second speaker is Ronnie Noonan-Birch. Ronnie looks at UN Sustainable Development Goals and the blue economy as a framework that will lead to meaningful solutions. Presently, she's pursuing a master's in Dalhousie University. And so her work is also focused on the blue economy. So, and our third speaker is Dr. Ameer Ebrahim. And Dr. Ameer is a marine ecologist with vast experience in fisheries management and ecology. He received his PhD in marine ecology in 2020 at the University of Queensland, Australia. And his research focuses on ecological and functional roles of commercially important rabbitfish species in the marine environment. So he's recently he was the head of fisheries management and technical fisheries and coordinator to the Seychelles Fishing Authority. And so Dr. Ameer also is the chief scientific advisor to the James Michael Foundation, an NGO, which aims to promote the blue economy concept. So Dr. Ameer comes from the Seychelles, and he'll be giving us his talk on the blue economy in the Seychelles, and probably from his other experiences around the world, in Australia, for instance. So without further ado, I'll call our first presenter, Dr. António, to start his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm very glad to be here. Many thanks for this opportunity, ECOP, to be part of this meeting and to share some ideas about what we are doing in Cape Verde. I'm from Cape Verde. I'm engaged in to analyze and to help the government to promote the blue economy. And I would like to share some idea what we have done and what our challenge. And as you know, Cape Verde is a small country. The sea is undoubtedly, the sea is our major resources we have. We are 99% sea. So because of that, the government tried to diversify our economy, investing in blue economy. We was very challenged with COVID and some others challenge. Our economy is very weak. We don't have scale, but we have the sea. We are island. The government very soon realized that we will not achieve our goals if we do the business as usual. We have some tradition in fisheries, in tourism, transport, some traditional sectors in blue economy. But now the government, since 2015, we adopt a blue economy policy chart, and it was improved in 2020 when the government established the goal for the blue economy to be a sustainable and inclusive blue economy, aiming to optimize economic, social, and environmental benefits. This is the goal the government is trying to achieve improving the blue economy. As I said, in Cape Verde, we are challenged to diversify our economy, the tourism. Even the tourism is engaged in natural resources. It's the sea, it's the sun, but we are trying to diversify our services for tourism, like yachting, maritime activities, swimming, boating, nautical sports, shark watch, whale watch, bird watch, turtle watch. As you know, Cape Verde become in 2020 the second most important sea turtle nesting point. Because of that, we have a lot of activities regarding around the sea that we can promote job, we can promote employment and earnings for people. All island is surrounded by sea, where by sea is what I can say, it's surrounded by activities. We can do a lot of activities using the sea we have. We are a tropical island because we don't have a quantity in fisheries. We don't have quantity, but we have a diversity. The challenge we face today is how we can exploit the resources we have. How can we diversify our fisheries sector? How we can use the services the ocean can provide. And the transport sector is very important for us, is a way we can connect to the island, is a way we can achieve a better and equitable development for all islands we have. We are very impacted by the climate change because our smallness and this, where we are located, we are very challenged with the drought. Last year we have 5 years with no rain. It was very difficult for us. This situation was eroded because the pandemic situation with COVID-19, and now we are facing a high inflation, a very increase, very high in prices, especially for poor people. So the government is very challenged to improve our economy, to diversify, and the blue economy is the only way we can guarantee opportunities for job. We can guarantee some dynamics in our entrepreneurship behavior. We have a lot of young people, they are very interested, but we lack of money, we lack of human resources, we lack of infrastructure. This is the goal we face. And now the government, realizing that, the government is trying to coordinate better all investment we need to do, because to achieve better results for blue economy, we need to improve not only the human resources, but we need to improve our infrastructure, and even we need to improve our institutional environment. Because of that, we have improved our law. We have done a lot of reforms in the blue economy. We have implement the, how can I say, the national protected areas. We have already protected a lot, some extent of our sea. We have adopted the policy charter for transport, policy charter for renewable energy. We have a very ambitious goal with renewable energy. We have a policy letter for blue economy. Because of that, we implement some an observatory for blue economy, and we promote every year the Cape Verde Ocean Week, when we implement an Expomar fair to promote business in blue economy. Our big challenge is how we can coordinate the investment and how we can coordinate all institutions engaged, all stakeholders. Because what we realize now, the human resource we have, it's not at the level we need to promote the blue economy. The infrastructure we have is not enough to sustain and to promote the private investment we need to support the blue economy growth. Because of that, we are trying to implement a national coordination program. We have tried to implement this national coordinate program just to certify that the potential we have in our sea can be put in place to improve our capacity, how can I say, we can use the sea we have to promote jobs, the sea we have to promote earnings for people, to promote equitable way for development. We are island, each island is very different. Some island is not, we have island more developed than others, but we can reduce these differences investing in our sea. Because of that, the government established the blue growth, the blue economy as the primary sector, the primary potential we need to invest just to achieve our goal. Because Cape Verde is a small country, we don't have the savings necessary for the investment. We will need some kind of institutional support. We will need a lot of, we will try to identify other countries just to see what they have done. We can find a lot of cases of success like in Seychelles, in Mauritius, and other countries. We would like to know their experience, not to avoid to commit the same errors, but to guarantee that our strategy can be successful. Because we don't have money, the money today is very costly. It costs a lot. We need a quantum minimum of investment to be put in place just to guarantee that the things will happen in a satisfactory way. Okay, because of that, the government in Cape Verde is engaged with partners. We have the World Bank, we have the National Program for Development, the UNDP, we have FAO. All these partners is engaged in activities and projects to help the country achieve a better results in blue growth, in blue economy. I'm sorry for my English, it's not easy for me to present all ideas I have, what a lot of things I would like to share, but in the chat, I can clarify some ideas, okay? Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor António, and it was a very, very interesting presentation, and it gives us an overview of the situation concerning the blue economy in Cape Verde, and also tells us a little bit about the challenges you're facing. And it's actually very, very interesting, because if we look at the situation in other countries, we notice that it's almost the same thing. And from my experience and from the studies I have made on this subject, you're describing what I've been hearing for so long. And if we have the same kind of situation, we know that we should protect our blue resources, and we know that we should still develop economically, and we have the same problems, then it's easy to streamline our approaches in order to achieve the same objectives. So thank you for sharing, and I'll open for questions. And if anyone has a question, please, you just raise your hand and ask directly to Professor António. And at the same time, I would launch the second poll. Any questions? Okay, if there's no question, I will go ahead and ask one myself. Professor António, you said a lot of things, and the approach which you talked about, one of the most important things you mentioned here is the fact that you've recognized that there's a problem and that there's already the government will, the political will to start a solution, and that you're learning from others in order to avoid the mistakes. And there's also the aspect of financing. You're looking for partners who, financial partners. But I didn't hear much about the future generation, the youth, who already have great ideas, and some of them even in Seychelles, and we are already working with them. And I didn't hear much about a program that will bring them into the whole framework on how to push for sustainable blue economy, making the youth who will be the leaders of tomorrow the center of the whole program. So how's that going in Cape Verde?
Yes, many thanks. Sure, what you have said is important. We can, for sustainability, we need to engage the young peoples. Because of that, the government established the national program, a national environmental education plan. We have a national environmental education plan when we integrate into the curricula of primary, secondary, and university education, including basic notions related to environmental protection, natural resource management, waste treatment, body care, health, hygiene, and safety. And we every year we implement very big meetings. This is Cabo Verde Ocean Week. It has a lot of advertising, a lot of people, a lot of activities at the school level, and we have done some kinds of how can I say, the blue ocean, the blue strategy, the blue economy, the blue growth is some kind of things that is always in our advertising. The government always try to engage the people. Even in Cabo Verde, even the partners like UNDP in their sustainable development goal, they always work at the community level to work with the children, to work with the young people, to sensitize, just to advertise the importance of the blue economy and the importance of the environment for our economy, because we are a very vulnerable country. We are very vulnerable country. The fisheries is the major sector. Here in Cabo Verde, a lot of island, a lot of people is engaged with fishery, but a lot of people don't know some specificities of fisheries. They are endangered. They are, a lot of species are overfished. We need to respect the norms. Because of that, we have a lot of advertising. We have a lot of program. In the major program, the major program is the environmental education plan that try to mainstream everything of the environment into the curricula.
Thank you very much. That sounds encouraging. And I hope that the ECOPs from Cape Verde, who are not aware of these different programs, would probably get themselves informed and then get active on the ground to make sure that you achieve your objectives towards the blue economy. All right, so if anybody else has a question for Professor António, I suggest you put it in the chat. I think we currently have a problem with the chat, but Natalie will deal with that. And you can still just write your questions down and then you can discuss at the end of the webinar. So our second speaker is Ronnie. Ronnie is from Canada, and she's currently working on her master's studies in environmental studies at Dalhousie University. So her main area of focus is the blue economy. And so she will be giving us the perspective of the blue economy in Canada. So Ronnie, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. I'll just go ahead and share my screen.
Great.
How's that looking for you?
Looks great.
Great, awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming and joining in on the conversation today. As Anthony mentioned, my name is Ronnie Noonan-Birch. I am a Master's of Environmental Studies candidate at Dalhousie University. My background has been in marine biology and marine conservation. I am slowly shifting my research focus into more policy. And I'll be chatting a little bit about what that looks like in my thesis. I'm also one of the co-leads for the Canadian chapter of the ECOP program, ECOP Canada. And shout out to everyone from Canada who's joining today. So my presentation title is Who is Blue Enough? A Canadian Perspective on the Blue Economy. Brief outline of what I'll be going over. I'll just give some context to Canada's blue economy. I will chat a bit about my own personal master's research and then end with some of the blue economy programs here in Canada. So Anthony gave a pretty good definition of the blue economy in the beginning. And this one is also a widely used one by many people when they refer to the blue economy. It's by the World Bank, and it states an ocean economy that seeks to promote economic growth, social inclusion, and preservation or improvement of livelihoods, while at the same time ensuring environmental sustainability. This definition is a very exciting one, and it paints quite a wonderful win-win scenario between economic, environmental, and social. But of course, there are a lot of critiques about the practicality and the applicability of this definition to enact such a vision. There's still even variability in the literature when using the term blue economy. Sometimes it is interchangeably used with ocean economy, and it does not have an inherent sustainability reference. So some groups and organizations refer to it as the sustainable blue economy in Canada to make a very big distinction. And this kind of ambiguity around what the blue economy actually means makes it very difficult to realize this vision. So in a Canadian context, we are an ocean country with the longest coastline. Our ocean sectors contribute approximately 31.7 billion GDP and many of our jobs. Canadians also depend on our oceans for culture, leisure, sustenance, and livelihood. And so far, the government is promoting this blue economy here in Canada, and there has been rumors of a strategy to enact a blue economy. And the first steps have been taken where the government of Canada has issued out a what we've heard report, call to action to various groups in Canada to give feedback on what a blue economy might look to them. Canada has also stated priorities for the blue economy strategies, such as securing private investment, establishing government funds, attracting innovation, and achieving buy-in from stakeholders, not unlike what's happening in Cabo Verde with António. The question that appears, though, when we think about driving this blue economy home is how do we make sure all of this investment and all of this attention gets directed to the right place? And that kind of comes to my overall question is who is blue enough? So while Canada has committed to growing a blue economy grounded in sustainability, we have not yet established criteria to identify what ocean activities and industrial operations could be considered sustainable or blue enough. Currently, all ocean sectors, including oil and gas, are included in the blue economy strategy here in Canada. And the problem really comes from when we don't have a distinction between the regular ocean economy and a blue economy that integrates the protection of ocean health, we risk blue washing. Blue washing is a term I coined to refer to either intentionally or unintentionally including unsustainable operations in the blue economy due to the lack of clear inclusion criteria. So this would dilute the blue economy's effectiveness at being a sustainable alternative to the regular ocean economy, which of course is, I've probably said already, it's just, it would make it not any different than the vision than what we have today in the regular ocean economy. So just briefly, that kind of summarizes the problem and the purpose of my own master's research. So the problem being we don't have this assessment framework to determine who is blue enough, and the purpose might be obvious, but to develop a framework to help make that, to help answer that question, to help decision makers understand who we are involving in this new vision. António mentioned these three pillars as well too, but the literature also states that the blue economy needs to be socially equitable, environmentally sustainable, and economically viable. These three pillars are what I'm building my framework upon. But of course, it's not as easy as looking at each of these pillars in silos. They don't exist by themselves. There are a lot of interdependencies and trade-offs that come with measuring and understanding how social equity is impacted by environmental sustainability, which is impacted by economic viability. An existing framework that best represents these entanglements are the Sustainable Development Goals, so the SDGs. If you're unfamiliar with the SDGs, there are 17 goals and 248 targets. All of these call to actions are meant to bring our world into a more sustainable place, and the priorities range from environmental, economic, and social. The SDGs are an important component of my framework and of the blue economy in general, because a successful blue economy needs to be accountable to the global commitment to sustainability. So whether it's at the national or the regional level, there needs to be a greater alignment so that when we talk about the blue economy globally, we have a starting point that we can all measure and work towards. I also really like this figure in the bottom left corner here, because this donut example shows that we cannot work on the Sustainable Development Goals or those three building blocks, those three pillars in silos. They're all dependent on each other. And when you're working on one, you're indirectly or directly contributing and working on the others. A brief, very rough outline of what my framework is. I won't go too much into the nitty-gritty science of it, but I'm very much happy to answer specific questions or follow up via email. But my framework consists of criteria that are informed by the Sustainable Development Goals, so relevant Sustainable Development Goals that enable economic viability, which then go to feed into mechanisms that blue economy actors in industry can employ to fulfill criteria and increase what I'm calling their blue score. And then further to develop an analytical tool that creates a benchmark so that we can start to measure different actors in the blue economy against to really understand, are they meeting our terms and criteria as a country, as a global organization to be a part of the blue economy. I wanted to touch on a bit about what I meant by economic viability, because I think it's very easy to see the complexities and the problems when we bring in economics to social and environmental priorities, but they don't have to be in competition with the other. And there are a couple ways in the blue economy where there can be synergy with economic viability and social and environmental priorities. So I just wanted to touch upon two of those. And one is this concept of conservation as an investment. And this is a core aspect of the developing blue economy, where we want to see ocean health generate ocean wealth. So it's a priority that we are taking care of the health of the ocean. And because we are taking care of the health of the ocean, we are seeing ocean wealth be generated from that. And then that can come from like a direct investment into consumptive assets. So for example, if you are running a fishing operation and your assets are how many fish you can bring in, the thinking behind conservation as an investment is that you would want to pour money into increasing these fish stocks, into making sure their conservation is there for yourself and future generations, because that is just good business sense. Or another example is for marine tourism. If your operation is economically viable because you get to bring people onto the ocean to appreciate your environment around you, how much are they going to be able to appreciate if, you know, there are no marine megafauna around, if there are no healthy coral reef systems? You would lose your asset as a business. So again, it makes good business sense for you to put money and time and investment into conservation of your asset. So this is a concept where we're trying to just flip the regular narrative of economic viability on its head to really consider what that means in a conservation sense. So an indirect investment into non-consumptive assets exists through existence value. So even if there's no direct monetary gain from leaving a beautiful forest untouched, there is a lot of cultural and livelihood gain that we might not understand or know about, as well as it directly impacts social license to operate. And social license to operate is another type of mechanism that where if there's high preference for existence and willingness to act on that preference, then any operation that hinders these actions will have a hard time maintaining and obtaining social license to operate. So social license to operate, an example of this is the ongoing acceptance and approval of an operation by local communities affected by it and those stakeholders who can affect its profitability. So ensuring when organizations are saying that they want to be a part of the blue economy, they need to engage with the community because the beliefs of the perceptions of the local community and other stakeholders hold over an operation can impact whether or not it's successful. This needs to be an ongoing conversation, and it is one of the criteria that organizations will be held to when they are trying to claim to be a part of the blue economy. And the social license to operate aspect will be increasingly important for young sectors of the blue economy. So sectors that we're not super familiar with, such as blue carbon or carbon sequestration, because they seem a little bit out there and we don't know the consequences. So it's important for those emerging sectors of the blue economy to increase their social license to operate, as they will be under scrutiny for the social, environmental, and economic impacts they could cause. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk a bit more on a Canadian focus about a program here in Canada that is paving the way to building a blue economy and to engaging ECOPs in that blue economy. And this is the Blue Futures Pathways program through the Students on Ice Foundation. And I'm just going to share with you about some of the resources that you can access if you yourself are a Canadian ECOP or a Canadian industry looking in the blue economy, looking to hire ECOPs through this program. So the Blue Futures Pathways program, or BFP, is one of the programs that the Students on Ice Foundation offers. This program is in partnership with COVE and ECOP Canada, and the objective of this program is to support youth, so 14 to 30 years old, who are interested in careers related to the sustainable ocean and water sectors, with educational resources, training, funding, mentorship, and employment. So if you are interested about this opportunity, please don't hesitate to reach out. Either, again, if you're a Canadian ECOP or if you are an industry leader looking to be a part of this program. But I really enjoy working with the Blue Futures Pathways program, and this is something that we try to do at ECOP Canada as well too, is to highlight that careers that we support are not just traditional careers that you think of when you think of water and oceans, such as those related to fishing and STEM, which are very much important, but we also want to include all types of careers in the blue economy, such as communications, marketing, public relations, finance, administration, cultural guides or advisors, arts and crafts, media, tourism. You get the picture. The blue economy needs far more than just traditional academia. It needs passionate people, and those come in all different types of careers, and that is who we're hoping to support. So again, there's some funding eligibility available. If you are a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or have refugee status, there is some funding that we can do with industries who are in the area, and I'd be more than happy to connect you further if you are interested. That is all I have for right now. So thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, and quite an interesting presentation, as I expected. Okay, I'll open the floor for questions, and if you have a question, please just raise your hand, or you can just put it in the Q&A, and so that we move forward, and then we can discuss at the end of the presentation. But there's room for one question. Any takers? Okay, so if there's no question directly, I would ask one. So Ronnie, I heard your presentation, and it's actually really interesting, but the part which I didn't get is like, what is the actual strategy that is in place by the Canadian government to ensure that the blue economy comes to life, as in a mechanism? Like, for instance, before we started talking about the blue economy, we had the concept of ecosystem-based management, and then there was an integrated coastal management framework. I know Canada was also very big in the ICOM, but what is the status today? And what's the difference between blue economy and ICOM? Thanks.
Well, that's a great question that I also have, because we don't know yet. The blue economy strategy in Canada hasn't been released. It's still been kind of a mysterious, mythical body of legislation that we're all very much anticipating. So we're not sure what it'll look like when it enacts, but we're all kind of holding our breath for when it is released. I believe, though, it's not something that when it's released, it will be set in stone, but it'll be more so a building block between industry and academia and communities to help really shape the vision together. So while we did have a What We Heard report, which was just the findings from the government going to various stakeholders, it really didn't tell us things we didn't already know. So it's going to be quite fascinating to learn about and receive when it does come out. You're muted, Anthony, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. And that was a very good answer. And I look forward to knowing how it goes as well. And so we move directly to our next speaker, who is Dr. Ameer. And as I introduced him earlier, Dr. Ameer is from the Seychelles, and he used to head the Fisheries Management as a technical coordinator to the Seychelles Fisheries Authority. So he will be giving us a presentation on the blue economy, and so we welcome Dr. Ameer, and we are running short of time, but I think Dr. Ameer, the presentation will be 20 minutes, and then after that there will be a chance for the participants to ask a few questions, and then after that we can go for general discussion and see how it goes from there. Okay, thank you, Dr. Ameer.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm just going to share my screen, everyone. Just bear with me. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, now you can just go to full screen. At the bottom of the screen, there's a little computer icon there, close to the slider. Yep, there. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. As Anthony has already introduced myself, I'm Ameer Ebrahim. I'm currently a marine and fisheries consultant. I was most recently the head of fisheries management and technical fisheries coordination at the Seychelles Fishing Authority for the government of Seychelles. And I'm also, in my personal capacity, the chief scientific advisor to former President James Michel of the Republic of Seychelles and his NGO, which is primarily focused on the blue economy. And as both our speakers have mentioned today, the blue economy is quite a vast topic. And today what I'm going to be doing is talking from personal experience. And it's more of a case study presentation on two projects that I've directly spearheaded in the Seychelles. So one, as I was very intrigued by Ronnie mentioned the blue carbon. So I'm going to be touching a little bit on that and what Seychelles has been doing with blue carbon. And also one of the chapters out of my PhD research, which is directly related not only to blue carbon, but to the blue economy as a whole. So I just want to dive straight into it. All right, so the first project that I'll be talking about is entitled The Roadmap to Blue Carbon Opportunities in the Seychelles. So this was a project that was spearheaded by the James Michel Foundation in partnership with Deakin University in Australia through funding through SEICAT. For those of you who don't know what SEICAT is, it was created for the Debt for Nature swap that Seychelles had adopted, and it was more of a platform to handle those funds in the Seychelles, which they are now 5 years strong and going on to their 6th year. So the aim of this project was specifically to advance Seychelles' blue economy by exploring blue carbon opportunities within the region and building on local capacity and literacy. So for those of you who may not know, what is blue carbon? They are ecosystems such as mangrove and seagrass habitats, and they have the capacity to bury carbon up to 40 to 50 times greater than that of tropical rainforests. And they provide important ecosystem services, and these habitats, such as flood mitigation, have been nursery grounds for important commercial fish species such as rabbitfish. And this project is quite timely to the Seychelles, as blue carbon ecosystems are declining quite drastically over the past few decades as a result of coastal development, climate change, through several projects that have happened as well through the Seychelles directly related to coastal development. And the objectives of the study was primarily to review the literature of work that has been done in the Seychelles in relation to blue carbon research. And secondly, to develop a roadmap to determine blue carbon opportunity in Seychelles, and also to raise awareness and build blue carbon capacity within the country. So the first objective, to review and synthesize Seychelles blue carbon research, well, the key findings were quite shocking. Tropical or the Western Indian Ocean is a blue carbon hotspot, and if you're looking at Seychelles in particularly, we have about the Western Indian Ocean in particular, we have about 5.3% of the total mangrove cover worldwide. And Seychelles alone has about 2 million hectares of seagrass. So what we found when doing this literature review was the sheer lack of data that exists within Seychelles. So what we had to do was move the literature review to the Western Indian Ocean as a whole. And that as well was quite shocking, where we found there was very little work that has been done, particularly on blue carbon. And in particular, there was a lack of data to support habitat distribution and below ground plant measures, and little information on soil carbon stocks and soil carbon sequestration rates. And shockingly, from the Seychelles, there were only 3 studies related to seagrass and mangrove habitats before the study. And soil data are critically important to account for the annual carbon being sequestered. And unfortunately, this information was not available. And so recommendations that came out from this literature review was actually to promote education on blue carbon concept from the ground, from the bottom up, basically, and invest in a seagrass research, particularly in seagrass mapping, which I'm happy to note that this has finally concluded in the Seychelles through a massive project that was undertaken by the Pew Charitable Trust in the Seychelles. And also we need to follow international guidelines for blue carbon assessments that will be directly related to the Western Indian Ocean. And small island developing states could definitely benefit from collaborating with regional blue carbon experts from around the world. And I think this project was a clear example of that, where we had teamed up with the team at Deakin University in Australia that have a vast experience in this sort of things. And also we need to invest in local training and capacity building. Okay, so the second objective was to develop the roadmap to determine blue carbon opportunities in Seychelles, and it was obviously to build on the literature review from the first objective, and it was also to get an understanding from key stakeholders. So we had implemented a sort of survey that was filled out by 100 separate individual stakeholder groups within the Seychelles, from government agencies to students, to scientists, to researchers, etc. And the roadmap document has been finalized. So this is a bit, these slides are a bit outdated. It was to identify key knowledge gaps and priority areas to advance Seychelles blue carbon research in Seychelles, and recommend the best methodology and plan strategy for assessing, mapping, and monitoring Seychelles blue carbon habitats. Also, it was also to identify opportunities and challenges for setting a blue carbon economy in Seychelles. And this is quite important. So now that the roadmap has been finalized in Seychelles, the question is what next? And a lot of questions are now coming into light, which were not taken into consideration before, such as legal frameworks. Who owns those blue carbon rights? And these are questions that we need to start asking straight away before this roadmap is going to be adopted and implemented. Also to determine the potential for practical actions to protect and restore Seychelles blue carbon habitats in existence. So Seychelles is ahead with this, in the sense that we have pledged internationally to the UNFCCC that we'll be protecting about 50% of mangrove and seagrass meadows by 2025 and 100% by 2030. So those have been already pledged by the government of Seychelles. Recommend on-ground blue carbon demonstration projects and scenarios for policy and development. So again, part of the outcomes of this project was an on-the-ground demonstration of how blue carbon is collected. And I think on the next slide, I'll be showing you a few photographs of how that went. And also, the third objective was to raise awareness and build blue carbon capacity. So we had several community engagement sessions in different districts that have strong blue carbon habitats. We had a scientific training and upskill workshop that was held. And we also had a high-level meeting with government officials, and the official handover for the roadmap document was done about a month ago to the minister responsible for environment of the Seychelles. So some of the key outputs, I've touched on a few of these, but I'll just be saying them again. So one of the main outputs was a comprehensive literature review, which can be downloaded free from the internet. If anyone needs a link to that, I can send it in the chat later. We had, as mentioned, scientific workshop and field demonstrations. So it was not only having some sort of workshop done in front of a computer. We actually took people out into the field and showed them exactly how blue carbon data is collected. We also launched a stakeholder survey, as mentioned. This is briefly showing the results. Again, I can share this later just due to time constraints, but it basically just shows people's attitudes towards mangrove and seagrass habitats and talking about other mitigating factors. The project had a lot of outreach, which was amazing. We appeared on the front page of the Seychelles Nation. I sat many interviews with the press on the radio, etc., and it got people talking about blue carbon. And as mentioned, the official handover was done to the government of Seychelles about a month ago. And that in the center of the photo is the minister responsible for environment in the Seychelles. Okay, so that was me talking about blue carbon, and now I'm going to switch gears and now talk about fisheries. So this is more of a case study that was a chapter basically taken out of my PhD research, and it was looking at rabbit fish. So for those of you who may not know, many of you that are not, maybe some of you that are from East Africa would understand how important rabbit fish are. In Seychelles, they make up the bulk of the artisanal fishery. And my research was looking more primarily at their movement between seagrass meadows and coral reefs and the interaction between those two habitats. So it was an acoustic telemetry study. So those are rabbit fish. And as mentioned to you, they are quite significant to the population of the artisanal fishery. They make up about 60% of the average annual catch. And my research was primarily focused on basically how they move between coral reefs, and if they move to seagrass meadows, and if there's connectivity between coral reefs and seagrass meadows. And studies such as this are quite important as they determine the spatial ecology of fishes. And from a perspective of not only conservation, but understanding a species, this is quite imperative. And also it can help determine where these fish are spawning, potential feeding sites, shelter areas. And also this will eventually lead to marine protected areas or sustainable fisheries management plans being developed for these specific areas if they are found. So my study was carried out on a pristine island in the Indian Ocean known as Dennis Island. And I don't want to really focus on the detail of the study because it is quite scientific. But if any of you have specific questions, it's free to download. So basically, if you look at the map, the red dots basically show where I place acoustic receivers, and the circles show the range of each of the receivers, which is approximately 250 meters. And as you can see, I've the array covered the whole coastal area of Dennis Island. These are just a few photos of me tagging the rabbitfish, placing the acoustic receivers, and the last photo is of me releasing the rabbitfish after they were tagged. And the analysis, so there were 3 specific analyses that were done to determine the home range. So how far do Cigana sutor, so the main rabbitfish species of the Seychelles, how far do they travel? When do they travel the most, and where do they travel? So again, I don't really want to get into the specific the science of the presentation, but basically the reason why home range is important is because it determines how far a species exerts their influence. For example, if they're feeding, how far do they feed, and how much of an impact does that have on a particular habitat? And some of the results basically show that on average they traveled quite far. They traveled about 900 meters per day during the day, particularly, and very little movement at night. And their range of travel was between 300 to 2,400 meters per day, and only between 0 to 150 meters at night. Their diurnal values obviously were quite extensive, so that means they were mostly diurnal species. Again, briefly, just going into the specifics of the science. So as you can see, the graph basically shows the 22 stations that had the acoustic receivers and where the most basically pings were had. And as you can see, there are specific areas where there was most movement of rabbitfish species. And this graph basically shows the time that they move the most, and it's between 6 and 8 a.m. in the morning. And where do they travel? So we wanted to know. So the map basically shows different habitats. So the green in the map shows seagrass meadows. The pink shows coral reefs, and the blue area show mixed habitat of both coral and seagrass. And they had a high site fidelity to one station in particular, station 9, where 60% of all the detection occurred. And that habitat was made up primarily of mixed coral and seagrass meadows. And also statistically, it showed that it influences the number of detections quite significantly. I don't want to get into the details of the statistical analysis, but basically the conclusion is that it was the first study to provide approximation of movements and home range for the species in the Indian Ocean. And it strengthens our knowledge as a mobile herbivorous fish species links to coral reefs and vice versa. And it provides supporting evidence that networked habitats to coral reefs should be considered when designing marine protected areas. And connectivity of habitats and strength of linkages to species within management components must be investigated for establishing efficient protection. So again, this paper can be downloaded using that link, but I'm happy to share it as well during our discussions. So that was it briefly. I apologize if I went into too much detail with regards to the science, but in an essence, I basically wanted to portray to you that the blue economy can mean very different things. There are vast areas of research that need to be incorporated when talking about the blue economy. And I hope that these two case studies of the Seychelles just showcase the amount of work that is being done in the Seychelles and will continue to be done in the Seychelles. And these are, if you need to contact me, please feel free to note down my email address, etc. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ameer. And in fact, we will be contacting you a lot because we are planning to, in ECOP Africa, we will really dig deep into the blue economy. And so we would really need your expertise. And so we would get back to you. Yeah. And thanks for the excellent presentation. And I would say that you didn't go into too much detail in terms of the science. It was just enough to get us to understand what you're talking about, and that was really good. And also your presentation really helped me to establish a connection between what Ronnie was saying and also your research. And so especially you mentioned the aspect of showing, ensuring that the conservation brings economic gain. And that's also what Ronnie was saying. We need to conserve, and if we conserve, we'll get more. And I think that's a potential area which is really important, and that will help now for governments to decide to go more into marine protected areas and thereby help to increase the capacity for marine protection and sustainable development. So I would open for questions now. And if anyone has a question for Dr. Ameer, you can go ahead and ask before we go into the final discussions. And Dr. Ameer, there are also some questions for all of you on the Q&A. So please just look through, and I'll be reading some of the questions as well later. All right, so if there's any questions, please go ahead. Just click the raise hand button at the bottom to indicate. Otherwise, while we are waiting, I will ask. And just for lack of time, I have a lot of questions for all of you, but hopefully we shall have another opportunity next time. Yeah, Dr. Ameer, you mentioned the fact that you look at the home range and the distance to which the fish travels to its feeding grounds in order to help to determine the extent of the protected area. Is that what it was? Is that a summary?
Yes, well, in an essence, to determine how far they move and how far they exert their influence, one thing that I forgot to mention was that they basically use the seagrass meadows to feed during the day and would go back to the coral reefs for shelter at night. Which shows that both of these habitats are extremely important for that particular species. And I think I saw one comment in the chat saying, why did I choose rabbitfish to do that study on? Well, the main reason is because it makes up the bulk of the artisanal fishery in Seychelles. So it's quite an important fish species, and not only to the Seychelles but to the Western Indian Ocean as a whole. I know in Kenya as well they really harvest rabbitfish species. So understanding their area of influence, understanding where they move, understanding how different areas may influence their movement were critical things that we needed to understand in order to establish some sort of mitigation of harvest or overexploitation of that species.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. Yeah, there's a question here in the chat, and I think it is addressed to all of you. If anyone of you wants to go ahead, the participant says that he's from a pure finance background and he has a PhD and he wants to do a PhD in the blue economy. And so what advice would you give this person? Dr. António, you want to go first? You're muted, please. Yeah.
Yes, can you repeat, please?
Yeah, the participant is from the finance background and he wants to do a PhD in the blue economy. In very briefly, what advice would you give this person?
Oh, in the blue economy, the big problem we face is the financing, because we need a lot of infrastructure must be put in place at the same time, because we need to make an ecosystem a very reliable and enabling ecosystem to support all the investment and all the activities in blue economy. What we face in Cabo Verde, we are trying to improve fisheries, but we lack of human capacity, we lack of smallness. We are very small. We don't have a scale to diversify our fisheries. The loss is around 40%. The loss of fisheries we catch is around 40%. We need a lot of investment in conservation, in processing, in transport, because blue economy is not only fisheries, it's a lot of activities, research, is activities, renewable energy, waste management, and all of that we need to coordinate. We need to coordinate the investment. I think one of the very interesting areas is how to coordinate the financial, how we can implement this. In Cabo Verde, we are trying to do the blue bond. In Seychelles, we have already know their experience. We are trying to implement here in Cabo Verde. It's very nice. It's a very nice instrument. We have some small funds, regional funds from transport, fisheries, but they are not in quantity for to achieve the, what can I say? It's a very small amount of money. And when we are talking about blue economy, is a changing of paradigm. Is another paradigm. We need to take into account the environment, the job creation. We need to balance sectors. We need to balance the sectors. Because of that, we need a financial scheme very, very well implemented.
Thank you very much, Dr. António. And If any other person has a response to this question, I think the participant can directly ask the panelist in an email. I think they provided their email, so you can ask directly for advice on what you do. Okay, now there's a question here for the Seychelles specifically. What is Seychelles doing to integrate the different sectors of the blue economy? I think is that the question you just answered, Dr. Ameer?
No, well, it's a very good question. So Seychelles has transitioned a lot with regards to the blue economy. And some may question either for the good or for the bad. In my perspective, there are a lot of issues in the sense that when the blue economy concept arrived in Seychelles, it was taken quite seriously. Just to put things in perspective, it was put under the portfolio of the Vice President of the Republic of Seychelles. We have a roadmap for the blue economy that was established around 2016. And shockingly enough, it has not been implemented to its capacity. We are also finding some shortfalls with regards to certain activities that Seychelles had spearheaded, for example, the Marine Spatial Plan. So the Marine Spatial Plan in Seychelles, we were one of the first countries in the world to actually spearhead by protecting 30% of our oceans. And it's now moved to the implementation stage. And now everyone's turning around and saying, "Oh my God, it's a major task." And I think those conversations were not had initially. 30% of the EEZ of Seychelles, so that's a vast area. So 1.3 the EEZ of Seychelles is 1.3 million square kilometers of ocean. So if you take 30% of that, you kind of realize the amount of work that's needed, the amount of collaboration, the amount of networking that is needed for it to be established efficiently. So just to answer the question bluntly, I don't think Seychelles is doing enough at the moment to actually tie in together all sectors to help establish a secure blue economy for the future.
Thank you very much. And, I think no country is doing enough. I think we just have to learn from each other, and then, yeah, with the political will, I think, yeah, a lot can be done. And I think also involving young people, the ECOPs, which we are, will do a lot as well. I think there's another question here. I think, Oni, I think this one, you can take it. The person says, what strategies to implement the blue economy involves scientists and students of ecology? That's, yeah, ecologists and students of ecology. So what would you say to that?
I'd say that's a pretty broad question. In Canada, well, maybe I'll just talk about the blue economy as a whole. And the blue economy has that environmental pillar. So it is necessary for ecologists and students of ecology to work directly with those on the social sciences and the finance side of things to understand the marine assets that are in the area. So understanding the ecosystem services primarily that are in the area that are generating money for the blue economy, and understanding how those relate to the social well-being of the communities that benefit from those ecosystem services. And I think that we really don't have a full understanding. We have a very limited understanding of the ecosystem services today that we know of, and there are probably so many connections that we haven't fully realized, and that's a very big part of the blue economy, because we wouldn't want to be doing activities that show us short-term sustainability but impact long-term gain, and that is a very important aspect of the blue economy. We won't know that without a proper mapping of our ocean systems.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that's exactly what Dr. Ameer just described to us right now, right? Yeah, so yeah, let's go really quick with the next question for Dr. António. This participant is asking about what Seychelles is doing to mitigate the problem of marine pollution, especially plastics, in its blue economy agenda.
Yes, in Cabo Verde, we have adopted a new law since 2015 that prohibit every commercialization of plastic in our national territory. The plastic pollution is the big problem we face in some island because of the current. A lot of waste we can find in some islands. A lot of waste, plastic pollution is a big challenge we face. It's not a national pollution, but because of a lot of transit of ships in our near our country, and even the current some island is very impacted with plastic. But internally, we have done some law. We have improved our law regarding plastic, and is now prohibited the trade with some kind of plastic. The one it's not biodegradable. It's on one of the policies, but in our national NDC, we have adopted some very ambitious goal to reduce the plastic pollution.
Thank you very much. That's encouraging to learn. I think we are really running out of time, and I'll just open the floor for any other questions to the participant directly, or any other suggestion or comment from anyone, including the panelists, before we wrap up. And for those whose questions have not been answered, I think you can address the questions directly to the panelists, and yeah, so that you can get in contact with them and ask your questions. So I give a last chance for final discussion and for comments. And in the meantime, I think I can just take another interesting question here from Uzoma to Ronnie, who says, so far in your work, are you optimistic these organizations are dealing to achieve the targets, and how cooperative were these organizations? I was talking about how the cooperation between organizations to achieve the blue economy targets in Canada, I guess. So are you optimistic about the ability to come together and work together to achieve the objectives?
I am pretty optimistic. I think Canada is being positioned as a leader in the blue economy space right now. We are seeing a lot of, especially around the ocean technology sector. I think as is the case with when you're trying to move any kind of government body in a direction, it's slow, and it takes a lot of feedback before anything moves forward. So that's kind of the stage we're at now, is the feedback stage, and we can see that everybody desires this same solution. I think maybe where it gets a little bit messy is how fast people want to get there. And some people realize that this is something dire, and that we need to get there as fast as possible. And perhaps that fast as possible process might require a bit more pain than if it was the slower route. And I think that's where maybe it's tricky in Canada and other countries to enact the vision, is how fast do we want to get there? How urgent is it? But I see a lot of alignment in the same direction.
Thank you very much. And I think the last question I have here is from a student who says that so far, it's a bit difficult to read. So he's asking, or she's asking, if there are organizations in Africa where student can join for internship in order to get experience on the blue economy. For Dr. Ameer and Dr. António. Please go ahead.
Well, from on my side, none really come to mind, but I'm sure that there are many. It just maybe a bit of research that needs to be done, but I'm definitely sure that that there are many organizations that are willing to take in volunteers.
Okay.
Yes, in Cabo Verde, we are just at the beginning. We have a lot of investment. We in the blue economy. We are in the aquaculture. We have big projects to feed the tuna. We have a shrimp, a small project with shrimp. We have small project with desalinated water with the waves. But they are a private investment. But at the government level, we are just at the beginning. Maybe for the next, the World Bank and the UNDP, they are trying to implement the small projects, to promote the blue economy. I think we can find some opportunities with this project, UNDP and the World Bank. The World Bank is a big project. It's a national project. It will work in the environment, institutional environment, the human capacity, and some kind of investment, big investment to support the blue economy. But at the UNDP is some kind of, how can I say, small projects to see if it's viable.
Thank you very much. And yeah, so I think we've come to the end, and I would like to thank you all for your time and your patience. We exceeded by quite a bit, and yeah, and but I think everything went well, and we thank all of the panelists who sacrificed their time, and also even at short notice, to give us this, make this webinar a success. And all the participants, we thank you as well for being here and for all of the engaging questions and comments in the chat. So we would, I would also thank Natalie for all the technical work she's done to make this possible. And Natalie, I don't know if you want to give a last word, but I would say that participants, you can always get back to the presenters if you have questions or you want to know a little bit more. And thank you, and that's it for me. All right, so Natalie, you have the final word.
Thank you to Anthony for moderating today, and thank you to all of our amazing presenters. And so it was an enlightening webinar, I think you'll agree, and there's lots of differences, there's lots of diversity in this area, and we're really on the cusp of things changing in this day and age. So we will share all the resources in email to everyone that's attended, and we'll just share one last survey question. So if you have any feedback once the webinar ends, you can just add in if you have any further comments or questions, and we'll follow up, and we'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks. So thank you so much to everyone for joining, and have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, and see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Many thanks for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you too.